What if everything you think you know about some of music's biggest names is only the surface of a much deeper story? Alleged secret recordings, a developing documentary, and unexplained silence from industry giants have sparked a wave of speculation online, pulling names like Justin Bieber, Usher, and 50 Cent into the center of a storm no one fully understands. And the most unsettling part, this might only be episode 1. What if I told you that one of the most influential figures in modern music history, a man who helped shape global superstars and built a legacy that once seemed untouchable, is now at the center of whispers he never saw coming? Not confirmed, not verified, but spreading fast. Because according to circulating online claims and insider speculation, a private storm has been building behind the scenes involving leaked material, secret recordings, and names that sit at the very top of the industry. And somehow at the center of it all is 50 Cent. But this didn't start with him. It didn't start with money or contracts either. It allegedly started with something far more dangerous in today's industry: recordings that were never meant to exist in public at all. Secret tapes. Material that, according to rumors, contains private moments from years ago involving some of the biggest names in music. Content that insiders describe as sensitive enough to potentially reshape public perception if it ever fully surfaced. And that's where things take a turn. Because one of the names repeatedly mentioned in these discussions is Justin Bieber, during his earliest rise, when he was still transitioning from a viral discovery into a global superstar. Back then, he wasn't alone. He was guided, mentored, positioned under the wing of established industry figures, most notably Usher, who played a key role in his early mainstream breakthrough. On the surface, it looked like a perfect industry story: a young prodigy being guided by an experienced superstar, public praise, red carpets, mutual respect, a clean narrative. But behind polished interviews and carefully managed public appearances, there have always been quiet rumors in entertainment circles, whispers about pressure, control, and the intense machinery behind turning a teenager into a global brand. For years, those whispers never turned into anything concrete. They stayed where most industry rumors stay, half seen, half heard, never proven. Until now, according to online speculation. Because what's fueling the current wave of discussion isn't just old relationships or resurfaced commentary. It's the alleged existence of recordings tied to private conversations and unseen moments from that era. And that's where the panic, if you believe the rumors, begins. Reports circulating on social platforms suggest that fragments of these materials may have been included or referenced in a documentary project focused on fame and the hidden cost of success. A project insiders are describing in dramatic terms, though no official confirmation has backed that claim. Still, the idea alone was enough to trigger attention. Because once word spreads that private material might be part of a documentary framework, everything around it shifts. People start moving differently, conversations become cautious, contacts go quiet, and in this unfolding narrative, every reaction becomes part of the story itself. This is where Usher's name begins to surface more heavily in online discussions. Unverified claims suggest concern behind the scenes, with speculation that outreach may have occurred regarding the direction of the project and the potential exposure of sensitive historical material. But it's important to be clear, none of this has been confirmed publicly. What exists right now is a cloud of rumor, interpretation, and fragmented online reporting. Still, in the world of celebrity narratives, perception alone is often enough to ignite chaos. And then there's the third force in this story, 50 Cent. Unlike the others, 50 Cent doesn't usually sit quietly on the sidelines of industry controversy. Over the years, he's built a reputation for amplifying disputes, calling out contradictions, and turning private tension into public conversation. So when his name gets attached to any developing situation like this, people pay attention. Online theories suggest that if any sensitive material truly exists, and if it passed through multiple hands during the development of a documentary-style project, then someone like 50 Cent being aware of it, or even loosely connected to it, would dramatically raise the stakes. But again, this is where fact and speculation blur, because what we actually know is very limited. There are no confirmed tapes released publicly, no verified documentary exposing the claims being circulated, no official statements validating the dramatic versions of events currently trending online. What exists instead is something more powerful in the digital age: narrative acceleration. A story hat grows faster than evidence. A situation where names, history, and past relationships get reinterpreted through the lens of suspicion and intrigue. And the deeper this narrative goes, the more it circles back to one central idea: control. Control over image, control over legacy, control over what stays private and what becomes public years later. That's why this story keeps expanding. Because if even a fraction of what's being discussed online has any basis in reality, then the implications aren't just personal, they're structural. They touch on how fame is built, how mentorship works in high-pressure industries, and how much of an artist's early journey is shaped away from the public eye. But there's another layer too. The timing. Why now? Why are these conversations resurfacing at this moment in time, years after the original relationships and early career phases being discussed? Some suggest it's coincidence. Others point to ongoing shifts in the entertainment industry, where documentaries, exposés, and retrospective storytelling have become more aggressive in revisiting the past. And in that environment, old stories rarely stay buried. They get reinterpreted, repackaged, reopened. Which brings us back to the central tension of this entire narrative. A mix of alleged recordings, a rumored documentary, public speculation, and high-profile names whose histories are now being re-examined under a far more intense spotlight. But even here, one thing remains consistent: nothing has been officially verified. And yet, the conversation continues to grow. Because in today's world, sometimes the reaction to a rumor travels faster than the truth itself. And as more voices enter the discussion, the story becomes less about what is proven and more about what people believe might be possible. And that's where the uncertainty deepens. Because once belief takes over, even silence starts to look like confirmation. So the question isn't just what's on the tapes, or whether they even exist in the form being described online. The real question is why this narrative has captured so much attention in the first place. And what happens next if it doesn't slow down? Because in stories like this, the most powerful moments aren't always the revelations. Sometimes it's the anticipation before anything is ever confirmed. If you're thinking this is just another celebrity rumor spiraling online, you're already underestimating how fast this situation escalated behind the scenes. Because according to unverified claims circulating across social platforms, this was no longer just about old relationships in the music industry. It had allegedly become something far more sensitive. Something tied to recordings, a developing documentary, and a growing sense of panic inside certain circles. And at the center of the tension, once again, is 50 Cent. But the story takes a sharper turn here. Because instead of going through legal channels or issuing a public statement, Usher is now being pulled into a version of events where he allegedly took a completely unexpected step. He reached out directly to 50 Cent. Not through representatives, not through management. Directly. And that alone is what set off even more speculation. Because in an industry where distance is control, Choosing direct contact with someone known for publicly exposing narratives instead of protecting them is a calculated risk. So the question instantly becomes, why him? Some online theories suggest it wasn't random at all. That maybe Usher believed 50 Cent already had access to certain materials, or at the very least, knew more than he was saying. If that's even partially true, then this wasn't just concern. It was urgency. A race against time to contain something before it reached a wider audience. But things didn't stay theoretical for long. Because shortly after, a piece of content began circulating online. At first, it looked insignificant. A short, low-quality clip, easy to ignore, easy to scroll past. Until people didn't. Within minutes, it was being shared in private groups, fan communities, and industry discussion threads. And what people saw, at least according to online reactions, was unsettling. The clip reportedly showed a younger Justin Bieber in a studio-like environment, talking, laughing, surrounded by off-camera voices. Nothing explicitly revealing, nothing clearly identifiable as wrongdoing. But something about it felt off to viewers. The tone, the atmosphere, the fragments of conversation in the background. And then came the detail that fueled everything else. Some viewers claimed one of the off-screen voices sounded like Usher. That single interpretation was enough to shift the entire conversation. Because once people start filling in gaps, the gap stops mattering. The clip was quickly cut off in circulation, adding another layer of suspicion. Almost as if the moment it was being shared, it was also being controlled. Then came the second wave. A screenshot allegedly tied to someone connected to production began circulating. No confirmed source, no verification. But the message it contained spread faster than anything else. There are hours of footage. Some of it shouldn't exist. That line alone changed the tone of the entire discussion. Because now it wasn't about a single clip anymore. It was about volume and unknown content, and what hasn't been seen yet. That's when the panic, at least online, started to multiply. But what made the situation even more intense was what didn't happen next. No official denial, no legal statement, no immediate shutdown. Just silence from Usher's side. And in entertainment circles, silence is rarely neutral. It usually means one of two things: preparation or containment. While that silence lingered, 50 Cent took a different route. A cryptic post appeared on his social media. People always got secrets until they don't. No names, no context, no explanation. But timing is everything in narratives like this. And the internet filled in the blanks instantly. Was it about the tapes? Was it about Usher? Was it a warning or just commentary? The ambiguity was the fuel. Then came another layer of alleged insider claims. A supposed private phone call between Usher and 50 Cent. Unverified, unconfirmed, but widely discussed online. According to circulating versions of the leak, Usher wasn't arguing. He wasn't threatening. He was asking, allegedly saying something along the lines of, "Not like this." That phrase alone became the center of interpretation. Because "not like this" implies control loss. It implies fear of context. It implies something being framed in a way that changes meaning entirely. But what this refers to remains unknown. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story alive. Then, just as speculation was stabilizing, a second wave of leaked content appeared. This time longer, clearer, more structured. Not just background noise, but visible conversation. And viewers began focusing less on what was being said and more on how it felt. Justin Bieber appeared subdued in parts of the footage, according to online interpretations. Less like a public performer, more like someone in a controlled environment. Meanwhile, another voice, reportedly older, more authoritative, was heard guiding the conversation. But here's the critical part. Nothing in the clip is confirmed, nothing is verified, and nothing explicitly proves wrongdoing. What exists instead is interpretation. And interpretation spreads faster than evidence ever does. Almost immediately, narratives formed online. Something isn't right here. Why does this feel staged? This doesn't look natural. And once those phrases take over, the original footage stops mattering. It becomes a symbol instead of evidence. Then came another escalation. Alleged internal emails surfaced online. Again, unverified but widely shared. And this is where the narrative expanded beyond individuals. Because according to these emails, the documentary project wasn't focused on just one story. It allegedly involved multiple artists, multiple timelines, multiple perspectives from inside the industry. And that changed everything. Because suddenly, this wasn't about a single relationship or a single recording. It was about scope. And scope means exposure. Then came the line that shifted the entire conversation again. Legal is already reviewing Usher's segment. Not appearance, not mention. Segment, which implies structured narrative involvement, which implies editorial framing, which implies he isn't just adjacent to the story. He's inside it. And if that detail is even partially accurate, then the real question is no longer what's on the tapes. It becomes, what role is he actually playing in them? And why is control over that framing so important? Just as the discussion began escalating again, another release appeared online. But this time, it wasn't random. It wasn't a leak in the usual sense. It was structured, controlled, intentional. A calculated drop designed to shift attention at exactly the right moment. And whatever was inside it was enough to push the entire story into its next phase. Late at night, when most of the internet had already moved on to whatever was trending next, a verified media page did something no one expected. No build-up, no warning, no context. Just a 12-second video. And a caption that instantly changed the tone of everything. The truth has layers. At first, it looked like another cryptic teaser, something designed to farm attention. But the moment people pressed play, it became clear this was different. This wasn't raw footage. It wasn't accidental. It was edited, structured, intentional. And at the center of it was Justin Bieber. Older than in previous clips being discussed online, more composed, but not relaxed, not peaceful. He looked like someone carrying years of silence in a single expression, like the weight of something unspoken had finally reached its limit. Then he spoke. People only see what they're allowed to see. No music sting, no dramatic narration, no branding. Just that line. And it landed harder than anything else in the entire unfolding narrative. Because it didn't feel like promotion, it didn't feel rehearsed. It felt like pressure finally turning into language. Then the screen cut to black. But before the video ended completely, 3 words flashed on screen. Chapter 1: Control. That was enough. Within minutes, social media stopped functioning like normal social media. Hashtags exploded, theories multiplied, screenshots circulated faster than anyone could verify anything. Bieber speaks. Usher exposed. Hollywood secrets. And one question dominated everything. Control of what, and control over who? But the teaser was only the beginning. Because just hours later, a new thread appeared online. Not from a fan account, not from a gossip page. From an anonymous profile claiming to be connected to the documentary's inner production circle. The account was new, but the detail in its posts made people pause. The thread opened with a sentence that reframed everything. "You're all focusing on the wrong clips. The real story is what hasn't been released." And then it escalated line by line. According to the alleged insider, the footage wasn't random at all. It was part of a long-term archive, years of material collected in controlled environments. Private studio sessions, closed-door meetings, behind-the-scenes interactions never meant for public viewing. And then came the line that shifted the entire emotional direction of the story. Justin didn't hand over the tapes for revenge. He did it because he felt trapped. That word, trapped, hit differently. Because suddenly, the narrative wasn't just about exposure or scandal anymore. It was about pressure, constraint, escape. And the internet reacted immediately. People who had already made up their minds started hesitating. What if there's more we're not seeing? What if the story isn't what it looks like? But just as quickly as sympathy began forming, another force pushed back. And at the center of that pushback, again, was 50 Cent. This time, no riddles, no cryptic hints. A short video, direct tone, no ambiguity. Careful what stories you believe. Everybody got angles. Angles. That single word split the conversation wide open. Because now, nothing felt stable anymore. 3 competing narratives formed instantly. Team Usher, Team Bieber, and the growing group convinced something much bigger was happening behind the scenes. Then came the next escalation. A second leak. This time, it wasn't a short clip or a screenshot. It was nearly 2 minutes of footage with clear audio and visible interaction. A younger Justin Bieber was seen seated across from an older, off-camera figure. The face wasn't fully visible, but the voice was enough for people to start speculating. Many believed it sounded like Usher. But what unsettled viewers wasn't anything explicit. It was the tone. Controlled dialogue, pauses, directional phrasing, a dynamic that some interpreted as guidance and others interpreted as something far more uncomfortable. Nothing in the clip confirmed wrongdoing. Nothing could be pointed to as definitive proof. But that didn't matter anymore. Because the internet doesn't wait for proof. It reacts to feeling. And the feeling spreading across timelines was doubt. Then came the official response, but not from any individual. From the documentary team itself. A short statement appeared. This project is not about one person, it is about a system. That line changed everything again. Because now the story wasn't contained anymore. Not Usher, not Bieber, not 50 Cent. A system. And that implied scale. Structure, depth, more names, more stories. And immediately, the questions multiplied. Who else is involved? How far does this go? Why release this now? And according to growing online speculation, the most disturbing part hadn't even surfaced yet. There were allegedly more tapes, more footage, more names, some of them far more powerful than anything already mentioned. Names that, if ever confirmed, would shift the entire industry landscape. But even that wasn't the final turn. Because the real explosion came from the audience itself. Fans stopped being observers. They became investigators. Every clip was slowed down, every frame analyzed, every silence questioned. TikTok breakdowns went viral. Look at his expression here. Why does that pause feel intentional? This doesn't feel normal. On X, threads spread like wildfire. We ignored the signs for years. This industry protects power. If everything drops, nothing stays the same. And just as quickly, a counter-movement formed. This is edited. This is context manipulation. Stop building narratives on fragments. The internet didn't just split. It fractured. Team Usher argued betrayal and manipulation. Team Bieber argued truth and suppression. And the rest simply watched the collapse of Usher. Tainty in real time. But underneath all of it, one thing became undeniable. This was no longer about a video. It was no longer about a teaser. It wasn't even about who said what. It had become something bigger. A fight over interpretation itself. And as new leaks, reactions, and counterleaks continued to emerge, one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Whatever this story is, it hasn't even reached its most chaotic phase yet. Belief has taken over this story more than facts ever did. And once belief takes control, proof stops being the deciding factor. It becomes interpretation, emotion, and influence. Because by now, the situation wasn't just being watched anymore. It was being read like a case file by millions of people online. And every news signal, no matter how small, was treated like evidence. It started with silence. Not the kind that means nothing is happening, but the kind that makes people uncomfortable. Because while the clips, posts, and theories kept multiplying, many of the biggest names in the industry didn't respond at all. No denials, no confirmations, no statements. Just silence. And in Hollywood, silence is never empty. It's strategic. It can mean preparation, distance, or something far more concerning, waiting for the right moment to speak. But the internet doesn't wait for clarity. It fills the gaps itself. And that's exactly what happened next. Old interviews were resurfaced, forgotten clips were replayed, offhand comments from years ago were suddenly being treated like clues. People weren't just watching anymore. They were reconstructing timelines, building narratives out of fragments, connecting dots that may or may not have been connected in the first place. And once that process began, the story stopped being about individuals. It became about something larger. Power, control, influence, and what actually happens behind the polished surface of the industry. Then the media stepped in. Headlines began shifting the tone even further. Hollywood's most explosive unfolding story yet. New documentary could shake the industry. Fans demand full release of alleged footage. But even the reporting wasn't unified. Some outlets played it safe. Others leaned into speculation. And a few hinted at things without ever directly saying them, suggesting there was information too sensitive to publish outright. Then came a legal statement. Short, controlled, carefully worded. We are aware of circulating content. Certain materials are being taken out of context. Further action is being reviewed. At first glance, it looked routine. But the internet dissected it instantly. Because what it didn't say mattered more than what it did. No denial of footage. No denial of tapes. No denial of involvement. Just one phrase repeated across every discussion. Out of context. And that ambiguity was enough to escalate everything again. Because to the public, silence plus vagueness often equals confirmation. At that point, the situation stopped behaving like a story. It started behaving like a global event. Live streams began breaking records. Comment sections turned into arguments. Entire communities formed around decoding every new post. And every new rumor didn't slow things down. It accelerated them. But the most dangerous phase came next. Because when facts run out, imagination takes over. Reddit threads began pulling up years-old interviews. Fans started rewatching performances, interviews, backstage moments, reinterpreting everything under a new lens. Nothing was neutral anymore. A joke became suspicious. A pause became meaningful. A glance became a theory. And suddenly, everything felt connected, even when it was. The media cycle only intensified it further. Some headlines leaned toward protecting reputations. Others hinted at deeper systems. A few carefully avoided specifics entirely, almost as if they were walking around something they couldn't directly say. And then came another statement, this time even more structured. This is not about one individual. This is about a system. That line changed the direction of the entire conversation. Because system means scale. And scale means more people are involved than anyone is currently naming. And that idea alone pushed the internet into its next phase. Now it wasn't just speculation. It was suspicion of structure, of patterns, of hidden layers. Then came the twist that escalated everything again. A leaked document surfaced briefly online before disappearing. But not before it was copied, saved, and spread everywhere. And what it allegedly contained wasn't another clip. It was an outline, a breakdown of a documentary structure, with sections, timelines, and categorized phases of storytelling. One section stood out above everything else. Control years. That phrase alone shifted the entire tone of the conversation. Because it implied a timeline, not isolated moments, but an extended period of influence and development. And according to what was circulating, that section focused on the early rise of Justin Bieber under close industry guidance. But what made people pause wasn't just the names mentioned. It was the inclusion of testimonies, anonymous accounts, people claiming to have witnessed things from inside that environment. And whether those claims are real or not, one thing is undeniable. Testimony changes perception. Because clips can be edited, statements can be denied. But testimony builds narrative weight. Then came another line from the leaked document that intensified everything again. Legal risks acknowledged, proceeding regardless. And that changed the tone completely. Because it suggested intention. Not hesitation. Not caution. But continuation despite pressure. And that's when a new layer of speculation formed online. What if this wasn't reactive? What if it was already planned? Then another claim emerged, this time even more controversial. That Usher had not just recently become aware of the situation, but may have known about it for years. And that single idea reframed everything. Because if awareness existed long before exposure, then the real question shifts. Why now? Why react now? Why panic now? And that's where 50 Cent re-enters the conversation. Not as a central figure in the footage, but as a figure influencing attention around it. Because every post, every cryptic caption, every timing coincidence online began to look intentional to some observers. Which leads to the darker theory, that this isn't just exposure. It's amplification. And amplification changes outcomes. It doesn't just reveal stories. It pushes them. And that brings the narrative to its most unstable point yet. Because now people aren't just asking what happened in the past. They're asking whether something is still happening now. Whether this is history being exposed, or an ongoing system being revealed in real time. And the most unsettling part, nobody can confirm where it ends. Because every time the story slows down, another layer appears, another file drops, another theory spreads, another leak changes direction. And just when it felt like the peak had been reached, a new message surfaced. Episode 1 was the warning, Episode 2 is the truth. And that's where everything stands now. Not resolved, not confirmed, still unfolding. And the only question left is the one nobody can answer yet. When Episode 2 arrives, What exactly is it going to show?